This ended up being Slack's first ever in-person kickoff. Morale, retention, feeling connected to the team, attrition, all of those things, like we saw impact there. The sentiment was just one of absolute inspiration. And we made a bet and it really paid off in both what we call overall AEs hitting quota. It's a great time to be in enablement when everyone is at quota, but also to see like that new product that we focused on be our absolute darling. It has continued to be the feature of our QBRs. It has continued to be the thing we double down on. It has been the thing we're putting more investment on the roadmap in because we're moving it. And also, that's always lovely to see that customers love the things we build.
Welcome to the Enablement Edge, the go-to resource for enablement and go-to-market pros. We're bringing you the secrets, strategies, and tactics that drive meaningful impact. You'll get valuable insights and expertise from enablement leaders so you can become an effective change agent, turn strategy into reality, and transform your organization for the better. On today's episode of the Enablement Edge, first of all, I'm joined by my friend and colleague, Amber Milano, co-host. Great to have you here, as always, Amber. And we're joined by today's special guest, Ashton Williams. She's Director of Slack Enablement at Salesforce. And she has some stories to share and some amazing insights for our listeners and guests. Amber, having just come out of this conversation with Ashton, what jumped out at you? What is one of your real highlights?
I think one of the things that really struck me as an enablement professional myself was she said that enablement's always trying to do more without always focusing on the most important thing, and that you'll find when you do focus on the most important thing, the rest of the things either fall into place or their prioritization becomes clear and they kind of fall off the platter. I thought that was really powerful for enablement folks that are typically, in fire department mode, just trying to put fires out everywhere. That really resonated with me. How about you?
I agree completely. She and her team did an amazing job of focus and rallying the wagons around that focus. And another thing that they did really well is they executed with a degree of commitment that aligned with the importance of this product release. I mean, we're talking about a really mission critical product release, and every aspect of what they did was aligned with that, from the executive commitment to it, to the financial commitment to it, to flying all of their salespeople to 3 different locations around the world and doing it face to face because they knew this was too important to do in conventional ways. They really aligned the execution with the importance of the mission, and that came through loud and clear. And I think that's a big reason, as we're going to hear from Ashton, why it is so successful.
Really powerful. And what a success story she has.
Ashton is fantastic. This episode is fantastic. I hope everyone enjoys it as much as I did. Let's jump in. Welcome to today's episode. And Ashton, thank you so much for joining us today on the show. I'm really excited for today's topic.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, Ashton, we're so excited to talk with you today. Before we really dive into the meat of our conversation, we'd just like to talk a little bit about how you envision enablement. So every organization at all different levels of maturity defines enablement a little bit differently. I'd love to hear from you before we really dig in about what do you think is the most important part of enablement function and how you can ensure success in building an effective enablement strategy.
I love this question. So I actually would say I've done enablement at a few different scale companies, and ultimately our job is to help keep performance consistent through change and through scale. And depending on the size of your company, that can look like different things. I'm at a tech company, product launches are big changes, but I've been at smaller companies where it's really we're en masse hiring or we're changing our go-to-market. I think the most important thing you can do in an enablement function is How do you keep performance up while we make changes, figure out the business scale, and navigate, the economy and the business we're trying to provide for? And ultimately be focused on data. The only way to be able to do that is to always know, what are we trying to impact? Who are we trying to impact? By when? And know your numbers. So if I can give any tips on what that means to me, enablement is unlocking impact regardless of your scale and change.
I love it.
love
Great
that.
guidance. Great guidance. You mentioned product launch, and that's exactly why we were so excited to have you on the show, because you've just come off a big one. And just to set the stage here, and Ashton is going to really take us into it, but product launch enablement is nothing new. Enablers have been doing it for a long time. But what if it's a really big, absolutely mission critical product launch? What if it's global in scale? What if it's got to happen super fast? And what if it gets moved up so it has to happen even sooner than you were planning for? Oh, and let's throw in some executive turnover and all kinds of crazy stuff going on. Somehow, this is what you got through and came out in a tremendous place. And I think our listeners and our viewers are going to really enjoy having you unpack that for us. Ashton, take us back a little bit, set the stage as of what you faced as you moved into this.
Yes. Well, once upon a time, there was a Q1 at a little company called Slack where we were moving into the AI space. And at that time, we had really brought on all new executives. I believe it was a new executive every 30 days for about 6 months. We had moved up our AI product launch to really start the year off with a new SKU and something that we felt was going to be really high impact in the market. And at the same time, we were undergoing the restructures that one does with a merger and acquisition. We were a year or two into the acquisition with Salesforce. So our teams were still getting settled in their new go-to-market. We did a go-to-market change, we did a new product, and we got a new executive team. And so all of this is accumulating while my team is moving. We're merging into the Salesforce enablement team. We're getting our executives settled on the Slack side, and we're trying to think about how are we bringing this big product, which is our big bet this year, to market. I also would be remiss to not acknowledge that, at our scale, my product marketers and my sales strategy and rev ops people are our best friends. This launch was certainly not done in a silo and certainly not just held by enablement. It takes a strong product marketing team to give you product market fit and all that messaging to be able to go into high impact learning. And that was really where we started from, which was great.
And we're talking about thousands of sellers around the world. And you were on a short timeline. You were enabling them on something that was going to make or break their year.
Well, what made this extra special is, we have sellers at Slack that sell Slack product, but we actually felt, what if all of Salesforce could just benefit from it? If you're a Salesforce customer, why wouldn't you want to buy the other products that they have? And so not only were we teaching our own Slack sellers to be specialists and experts in our product, we were also opening up that selling motion to every seller at Salesforce. So we had a dual initiative: teach our folks to be the best there is and have them help the new folks that are onboarding to selling Slack for the first time in the midst of a launch of our AI product, which is new to everyone in the market. It's been around for a little while, but still needs to be demystified. Customers still have lots of questions, and AI is kind of our future right now. So in Q1, it felt huge.
And you went all in, right? This wasn't just the number one priority. This was it, right?
I would say we went all in so many ways on this product, from how we built it, from how it got moved up, from what it got integrated into, to really trying to understand who could sell it, making sure the whole world could have it as close together as possible. And we doubled down on technical enablement for this. So our solutions team went through a certification. Then we went through our sellers, and we brought our CSMs into that. And so everyone had to be an AI expert as being part of Salesforce anyway. That's part of our strategy, which, we're looking to be the number one AI company. But with this new SKU launch in February, we all had to be ready to go alongside the wider company motion. How we did that is we were also doing a kickoff. And so the way Salesforce works, which is important for everyone to know, we do something called Go for Growth. Every year, everyone knows your books are going to change. We're going to have a kickoff February is your time where you get settled in your accounts and you get your new book and you go through all your kickoff motions. There's the company kickoff because we have a number of products and launches that are happening. We double down on messaging and what you need to know. And then we have your region and industry kickoffs. And that's where you're really sitting in your teams, going through your account plans and really getting a head start to the year. And we call this fast start. All of this must be done by February usually. And as you can imagine, as big as we are with many products we are, getting airtime can be quite challenging. And so we actually did a dual motion, one where we ran sessions for our Salesforce core sellers, so the folks that sell Salesforce product. We were in Vegas, we were in person, we had training for all of our leaders, and then in those regional sessions, we delivered there. And our product marketers really were the stars of that delivery, as long as our solutions folks. And then we actually led Slack's own kickoff, which we did in person, 3 regions. So all of Americas flew to one place, all of APAC flew to Sydney, and everyone in Europe flew to Dublin. So we ran 3 simultaneous in-person live kickoffs right after coming back from our February of kicking off in Vegas and kicking off around our offices. To say that I traveled a lot would be an understatement during that time, but what was really special about that is it was a virtual experience because we had to connect 3 regions in one time zone and make it work. But it was also a local experience of my industry, my country, my language to unlock learning. And I think that was just a behemoth of a project, and it paid off.
One of the things we talked about on our pre-interview was the fact that you went all in on this new SKU. As we've just heard, all of the effort that got put into doing that. How did you do that? How did you figure out, how are we going to pull this off? I think one of the things that you said is enablement teams are used to trying to focus on all the things and what's more important. And you got to focus on what's most important, and all the other things will fall into place. Tell us more about that mindset.
I've always been of the mind that you cannot do everything very well. And even if people ask for everything, they probably need 1 or 2 things. So, as a leader to really support my team, it's my job to narrow down those priorities and get us focused on what we can actually have impact on. And we had another new SKU that had just come out like 6 months earlier, and we were doubling down on major innovations for that. We had 9 other releases happening during that time. Salesforce was releasing AI product at the same time. In addition to, in every country, there's a little bit of nuance of what we're releasing within a feature set. And so there were a number of things we could have done, and we could have spent time on skills. We could have spent time on, the thing we thought was going to move enterprise business. But we actually narrowed it down with our sales strategy teams to go, what's the addressable market? Where's the big bet? What's going to start in Q1 and close in Q1? And what's going to give us the most bang for our buck at this time? It's got to be just easy enough to understand, easy enough to move. Do we have the runway to really train people to be experts at this? Do we have the runway to get our technical experts up to speed? Because an AE and an SE are absolute best friends, or solutions engineers, what we call them. And so we really had to think about where can we have the most impact. And the wave of AI was happening, so that was in our favor, but also it wasn't a super complicated product, which meant you could go deep on it and you could move it forward and you could explain it to customers. Our reps could actually learn that and master that in a quarter. And we decided to double down on that being, yes, we're doing other things, but if you walk away with one thing, it's going to be Slack AI.
How did you manage the tension, the competing demands from different product owners, different part of the business? Was it like, hey, what about our products? What about our focus? We're important too. This is important too. I think you're over rotating on one thing, as important as it is. You need to support our stuff too. Surely you face that. We all do. Mm-hmm. How did you kind of not only first gain that focus on one thing, but how did you maintain it?
So I will say this is a testament to a really strong executive team. I love this role because I love the executives that I work with. They came in and were very aligned and committed to what they were going to align on. So we were fortunate that this conversation wasn't as painful because they also saw the need to, they're new here, so they also have to focus on what they can do right now. And that worked out. I think in the wider company, the tension we have, which any acquired company or brand under a brand is going to feel, is there's the corporate tax of what's happening en masse, and there's what's going to move this business unit forward. And I think we were really fortunate that in that February time, we were focused on being a part of what's going to move the business forward. And then in March, when we did our own kickoff, we got to focus on what's going to move our business unit forward. And we made the trade-off of spending the money to bring people together after kickoff and doing our own. And that was a decision made with our CEO, CRO, and CSO and CMOs. And so I would say we had a really aligned leadership team that felt like we needed to have the time carved out. We needed to come together, but we also needed to participate, and we just extended our time a little. And the trade-off could have been that we learned too late in Q1, we didn't make pipeline, but that actually didn't end up being the case, which was great. So it was a risk, but the rewards were great.
You were mindful that there may have been some necessary pivots along the way. Were you able to kind of maintain focus and clarity, but also a little bit of flexibility?
Yeah, I think one of the reasons I'm forever proud of this project, I think, is it's in enablement. We often try to avoid the pivot. We want to get on the track and we want to have no more changes. And we're really frustrated when our leaders change their minds, right? But if you are keeping your eye on the business, I've been in sales, I've been a sales leader, week to week, you get new information. It's like when you're talking to a customer, every week you're asking them, is this still a priority? Has anything changed? What's going on? And we actually managed our working groups and executives in the same way. Hey, it's a new week. Here's where we left off. Has something changed? We need to consider something else. Is something to add or drop? Are these still the priorities? And it was my role to really make sure that every week we were checking in, is this still it? Are we still betting here? And so instead of trying to shield and protect from a pivot, I really prepared my team that hey, this week we're going to ask some questions. You need to be clear on how far along we are, what the risks are for a change. I need to know that because I'm going to ask, okay, is there new information? And every meeting there was. Every meeting we got proposed a pivot. I'm not going to pretend that did not happen, but I was prepared to go, okay, let's say you pivot this today. We are now 60 days out from the event. People are flying in. Speakers are aligned. So you have 2 weeks to sort it out and fly someone new in. And I don't know that risk is worth it, right? But I often say, you hear someone say but the executive said. That is my most hated statement of why are we doing something? If you provide executives with visibility into the risks and what's happening, they're going to make an informed decision. But if you're like, hey, what about this? They're going to be great idea. Sure. Of course you're going to get a yes. It doesn't sound bad. But when I present the risks or what the trade-offs are, then we're really having a united conversation. And I think in Enablement, we forget that our job is also to showcase risk. If you change here, we lose momentum, we're pivoting the field, our focus might look different. We're cutting that timeline on getting to pipeline and getting people doing the thing. And we forget to say that sometimes in the meeting where we're like, we just don't agree. And I'm like, well, but why? And so I think, and I hope hopefully my executives feel this way, that I wasn't super annoying asking that every single week, but it really helped us all get back to why are we doing this? Are we clear? And by the time we got around, everyone was just on the bus. And most enablement initiatives, it doesn't even have to be the best initiative you ever run, but if your sales leadership, your executives, and your teams are on the bus, it's always going to be great because that's what we always strive for, right? Is everyone engaged and going in the same direction.
That's amazing. We talk a lot about enablement having a seat at the table on this podcast, and I love that what you've just described is enablement helping the entire business stay aligned and keeping in mind, based on data, to tie back to what you told us in your initial statement. You had the data of this is the cost of pivoting now. This is where we've already gotten to. This is what we'll have to do if we do pivot, and helped everybody remain on task, on goal. And that's a powerful motion to be able to keep that going.
Yeah, I always want to add here, because I think when we say data, it can be so scary, right? I didn't have the sales data. I didn't have the total addressable market data. I certainly didn't have the product data, but I had to have my data. Mm-hmm. And so my ask was always, what data do you have that might inform this? I can tell you the logistics that are going to shift, the costs that are going to move, and the impact to the learning, because that's my job. But I didn't need to know or stay on top of every single sales deal that might have pivoted why we're talking about something, right? That is questions to ask. And I think we also in Enablement get really scared about having to have the same level of data that our sales leaders have, as opposed to knowing what questions to ask, knowing they hold quite a great deal of it. And that's actually where I say my PMMs, my sales programs and strategy folks, I know what data they have and are responsible for, and I know what data I have to have. And being able to have that gives me freedom to go, I know you know something. Here's where I'm at. Where are we going?
Yeah, that's amazing.
Let's talk tactics. Let's talk specifics. What did this enablement look like, Ashton?
Yeah, let me tell you about the program, because I think this was such a fun one to put together, and it came across so many teams to think through how to make this great. So basically, if I talk about the learning journey here, the first stop was our leaders flew to Vegas in person and had a live session where we actually provided something called an EDO. Basically, it is a demo org made for our AEs to be able to demo our product. It's a demo that allows them to show their Slack instance, right? Without necessarily showing their personal Slack instance. But getting everybody hands-on in the product and really learning about the innovations as they're going through that demo became really powerful. So all our sales leaders went through that. Then they went into their kind of regions and kicked off with their respective industries, and they got sessions on this product for this industry. So they could really make product make sense in the context of the industry or country with which they sell. And those were, webinars that we ran globally that moved through different teams. Then we went into a certification. And so they had about 6 sessions on AI where we did Q&A, we brought AI scientists, we brought our solutions in, and everyone had to really double down on what does this mean as overall business trend, but also what does this mean in this product, and how does it work, and how does it impact our customers' business? And they went through a whole series and then completed a formal certification, which was competitive positioning, nailing that demo, AI, our other SKUs. And then we ran a separate certification for our solutions engineers to also be able to nail all those things. And we broke the product out by basically line of business. So who are you talking to? And what is the story for that person? Is it a CRO? Is it a CMO? Is it a CSO? And so we were really able to create the container that makes product knowledge land. I think when we just talk about product, you're asking sellers to do a lot of work to make sense of product on its own. And we forget that the containers they live in is who am I talking to and what industry. If you tell product without those containers, it takes so much longer to learn. And I think what we did really well in this was either this thing doesn't need a container because it's actually that big, or here is how you would say this to this executive in the room. And this is what you would show, say, do. And for the one layer down, what would that look like? And instead of spending so much time on how does this work or this new cool thing, we really went, what's the conversation you're going to have? And how do I prepare you for that? So that you can answer the questions the customer's going to have. And I think that really lended itself well to people feeling confident. We also had live pitches, and we made people do it in person. We love a show, but I think it was a combination of the learning container, the hands-on practice, and then leaders, because they went first, were equipped to actually reinforce and coach, and they could run that exercise anytime they needed. And I think that's really what made it special, is it engaged in every section that an AE has a touch point with to learn.
You were very quick to celebrate your partners in product marketing. You made it very clear that this was a joint venture and a strong partnership. Tell us how that comes together and works well, because in some firms that there can be tension there. Mm-hmm. There can be tension over who owns what. There can be tension over priorities and a whole lot more. How do you work with them such that really is a powerful partnership?
Yeah, I'll say it took us time to get that right. And tension between PMM and enablement is like tension between sales and marketing. It'll always be there, and it's a healthy one, right? We're both trying to do our best work, and we're going to step on each other's toes sometimes, and that's actually good for the business. I think my attitude towards that also makes for a little less tension. But I would say we were able to get to kind of freedom within a framework. And so we set out early on to say, we own XYZ. And these are the things you can trust us to deliver. You do not need to figure out where people are going. You don't have to figure out the logistics of the event. You do not need to figure out how long a session should be. You do not need to rally the sales leaders and get them all involved. We got you. But what we do need from you is solid, vetted content. So you need to make sure that all the leaders are bought into the messaging that you're presenting. You need to preview that with them. You need to be sure that how we're going to market is staying and not changing. We need the demos. We need the decks. We need the customer stories. If you have that bill of materials, our job is to make you look wonderful and make it hit the field in a way that resonates, that lands, and that has impact. And we share those wins. But what we're not asking you to do is run training and figure out the best way to deliver that. Sometimes we're asking you to be the speakers and the SMEs, right? And I think because of just how condensed this event was, it forced us into like, I actually can't do more than this thing. And that became freedom for everyone to go, I own this. I know what I own. I know the person to go to. I know whose name I go to for this. I also, within my team, gave them work stream. So they had like one person owned content. Their job was like sales leaders and PMM, like dry runs, making sure the content is vetted, checking in on it, pushing deadlines. One person did that, and another person had logistics. Do we need to move buildings? Are invites going crazy? Because now that we have a kickoff, everyone's inviting everyone and we don't have space. How are we moving people left, right? How are we getting things virtually connected to the other regions? How are we organizing the other regions' schedules to overlap with us? And those swim lanes really helped. I think they're challenging, and my team will tell you they were challenging, but having a single point of contact also meant full visibility to be able to unblock red tape, right? That person sees all the content. They can tell you if that deadline is real or not, if that matters or not, how many people are going to be in that room or not. So they could also unlock things like when other folks get stuck. And vice versa, our PMMs were really focused on that event that went outward to kind of our internal Salesforce partners, while we were focused on the event that was inward to our own Slack sellers. So we also even divided and conquered in who owned what part of those events. They took the lead there, we took the lead here. And, sales programs underneath was like, we got your numbers, we got your head count, we're going to tell you if something's changing. And that informed what became kind of a smaller workshop versus an overarching theme of the event or launch.
Tell us a little bit more about the outcomes that you got to. This is such a great story. We want to give you a chance to really bask in the glory of all of the things that you accomplished. Can you share some of that data with us about your accomplishments here?
Yes. So I can't share everything, but I think what I can share are there were three main things that we set out to do. So one, we had an entirely new executive team and a new go-to-market model. People's jobs changed, and we really wanted people to feel connected to their teams, like that this change was exciting, and to see the path forward to success. This ended up being Slack's first ever in-person kickoff. Some people had not met despite being at the company for years. And we didn't do it in San Francisco. Our headquarters is San Francisco, so everyone was like super happy to fly somewhere, so it felt extra special. But I would say just overall like morale, retention, feeling connected to the team, attrition, all of those things, like we saw impact there. The sentiment was just one of absolute inspiration. And I know we all feel rah-rah after a kickoff, but it is shown through we're well into Q3 and people still feel like that was the best. We still get compliments on like, that was the best event I've had. And I feel like I love working here. So that's always great. The second is the SKU we focused on ended up being an absolutely impressive motion. It became one we could move quickly on. We were hitting insane targets. Most people at 100%, if not more year over year. We saw things like for this one forecast, up 60, 30, 40% in different regions. We also were accounting for a pretty huge chunk of Salesforce's overall AI business. And for how small our cloud is, that's really impressive. So it was an unlock, I think, of we made a bet and it really paid off in both what we call overall AEs hitting quota. It's a great time to be in enablement when everyone is at quota. That is the best feeling. People are happy, they're making money, and we love that. But also to see like that new product that we focused on be our absolute darling. It has continued to be the feature of our QBRs. It has continued to be the thing we double down on. It has been the thing we're putting more investment on the roadmap in because we're moving it. And also, that's always lovely to see that customers love the things we build. And then the third was really, we were pulling together a global team. So our teams were actually segmented by country before. They didn't all ladder into one leader. And this time we actually pulled everyone back under one leader. So they were a unified global team after having been disparate for a year. And the scale and logistics and translation and learning and nuances of really orienting 3 mega regions across different countries and languages. And we still had some folks who like dotted line reported out, but we invited them to really figuring out all those audiences and making it make sense for them. That was also something that I would say people still go back and are like, can I just have like the kickoff document that has all the videos? I want to see that again. Like that's what people are still coming back to, but also that people felt unified even when they didn't report into us. And I think that tells me that we did a great job. People are proud to be in their seat. They're proud to sell the thing they're selling, and we sold it like hotcakes, and we still are.
What a success story from start to finish. Everybody involved. That's exciting. What about any things you would do differently, or looking back, you would maybe have changed your approach?
Yeah. I would say in this specific instance, the runway, more time. I don't think any answer other than more time would have been, like, everyone will say that. I think we had about a 60-day, maybe 75-day runway from like we decided to do this to like we had it. So that's a really short runway to move that many people around the world. It cost us a lot more because of that runway. So I would have loved to have more economies of scale there. But honestly, with a new executive team coming in, I don't think we could have moved much different. I think the only thing I would have done differently is based on this timing, we had half of our go-to-market. So we had sales and solutions in person with kind of leadership from our post-sale orgs because we just couldn't move that many people around. And I think if I were to do it differently, the only feedback we got was it was just such a miss to not have everyone there. But with 60 days out and no event space booked, we just couldn't fit everyone. But I think figuring out just a better way to include them, because realistically, if we sell something like hotcakes, our post-sale team has got to help customers see value from that. And I think there was a bit of a lag on like getting them what they needed because we focused so much on the pre-sale motion during kickoff.
Sounds like the old adage, don't let perfect be the enemy of great, or enemy of good.
What
you did was great. Was it perfect? Well, no, but whatever is. And you could have spent 2 years planning perfect, and by then it would have been too late. So
100%.
It sounds like a tremendous triumph and something that you and your team, and I mean not only your enablement team, but the broader team should be very proud of. Really glad that you shared those stories with us. Let's close out with just a few interesting, thought-provoking questions that we've been asking a lot of people. The first one is, what do you think is going to really change in enablement over the next 18 to 24 months?
Oh, that's such a good question. I do really think that AI is changing or modernizing enablement. I think there's like a part of our role that is strategy and aligning our leaders. And then there's like the tactical things that we all do that are the stuff we love, the instructional design, the building of a great session, the designing of a program. But then there's those things that really complement that, your comms plans, how are you moving things through programming, data. And I think AI actually lifts a ton of that admin work that used to be insurmountable in order to get to clear data or just like finishing a program's launch. I think that will really force people who lean heavily on the administrative and tactical, and I think a lot of sales leaders who don't understand enablement lean on their folks for that, hence we get event planning or please write all my comms. But I think AI really changes how much weight those hold. And I hope that frees us up to be strategic partners and consultants and make it easier for us to grab the data and the things we need to show the value. But I do think it changes our jobs a bit. Like AI can coach someone today. AI can be a one-on-one assistant to a rep. And so we used to have to think about how to get to those things en masse. So I think we're going to have to modernize our approach to learning for impact. And I think AI is going to be our friend in that.
What is never going to change?
I think what will never change is the need for internal education to keep sellers sharp. I don't see a world where you can launch a product, make a big change, put a new tool in place, change your hiring profile, and not have a dedicated team to support that and be successful as you scale. So whether it becomes, and I actually joke around this, like, enablement is born of the original HR functions of a factory, right? We are the how do you not get hurt on the assembly line team? And then, how do you learn to be more efficient on the assembly line team? And okay, we're no longer an assembly line, so there's more to learn. Whether we fall in an education arm under people or we report directly into sales, I don't think any company can safely scale and protect their investment without investing in their people. And I think sales specifically requires a unique investment that is not the same as company productivity, and I feel like that will never change.
I love it. Final question, Ashton. What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Ooh. So I once had a mentor, a boss. I was a bit earlier in my career, and I was just freaking out. We had like 100 things happening, and I didn't know what to do. And I was asking him like every 2 seconds, like, what do you think of this? And what do you think of this? And it was similar to the kind of enablement CRO relationship. And he sat me down and he was like, I hired you because I think you are the best person to decide our way forward. I don't know how to do your job. I need you to know how to do your job. And if you don't know, I trust that you're going to go learn and network and bring back things that I personally cannot do. And I think in enablement, when we're seeking alignment, sometimes we're seeking validation for our choices, as opposed to going, no, I am the expert in how people are going to learn this best. I'm the expert in how I know you want to shout 30 things at people, but like you want them to do X. And really taking ownership of like, that is our wheelhouse. That is the place our toes should not be stepped on. It's so easy to forget when we're seeking kind of alignment or if we're in an uncertain climate. And I think that advice is when I come back to all the time. There's sometimes where I'm doing something out of scope and I'm like, how should I do this? And then I'm like, you know what? It's being handed to me because nobody knows how to do it. And so I got to figure it out. And that's just business. But I'm so much more peaceful about that. And it was funny. Like, it was a real conversation where I was like, are you going to fire me? And he was like, no, what? He's like, I just want you to like trust yourself and like whatever call you make, like if it's bad, we'll figure it out. But like, I don't know a better call than you do. And I think sometimes we underestimate ourselves and we have a wide angle lens on the business. I always want my sales leaders' input. They know my customer better than anybody, but they don't know all the things that are moving. They don't sit with finance and CHR chats. And like, we just have this wide angle lens on the business. We really need to remember that is a superpower to be a consultant here.
Excellent advice. Sounds like an excellent boss too. Really appreciate you sharing that and sharing everything that you brought today, Ashton. I find the stories you tell, the insights you bring, and the way you bring them with just so much passion and so much heart. I find it not only a real education, but a real inspiration as well. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for joining us on the Enablement Edge. We're on YouTube and all your favorite podcast providers. See you next time.
The Enablement Edge is brought to you by the team at Seismic. Seismic is the global leader in enablement, keeping organizations on the cutting edge of engaging customers, enabling teams, and igniting revenue growth. You can learn more at seismic.com.